Let me tell you something that will change the way you think about your life, your business, and your value. In a world full of copies, counterfeits, and cheap substitutes, your goal should never be to blend in. Your goal should be to stand out, to become rare to find and hard to replace. Because the marketplace doesn't reward average, it rewards excellence, distinction, and value. Scarcity creates value. And the truth is most people live their lives trying to fit into what's common. They try to do what everyone else is doing. They try to look like everyone else. And they try to build their businesses in the same way as everyone else. But when you become what everyone else is, you set yourself up to be treated the way everyone else is treated. You get average opportunities, average recognition, and average results. What changes the game is not being common, but becoming uncommon. Rare things are sought after, rare things get protected, rare things command respect, and rare things have value far beyond the ordinary. Think about it. Gold is valuable because there's not a pile of it on every street corner. Diamonds are valuable not just because they're beautiful, but because you cannot walk outside and pick them up off the ground. The market teaches us this every day. Scarcity multiplies value. The same principle applies to you and your life. If you are showing up in the marketplace as someone easily duplicated, easily copied, easily replaced, then you have placed yourself in the category of the common. And when you are in the category of the common, people don't pay for you. They pay around you. They don't need you. They just need somebody like you. But when you make yourself rare, when you put in the time to develop a skill set most people aren't willing to develop, when you discipline yourself in ways most people won't, suddenly you move yourself into a completely different category. Now, you're not one of many, you are one of one. Scarcity is not just about doing something nobody else can do. It's about being willing to do what most people won't do. Most people won't invest years in building a skill that only pays off later. Most people won't sacrifice temporary pleasure for long-term impact. Most people won't step out of the box of comfort and stretch themselves into mastery. That's why rare people are rare, because the masses are unwilling to pay the price that creates uncommon value. And when you are willing, when you make the decision that average is no longer acceptable, you begin to elevate yourself above the competition by default. It's also about the perception of rarity. If you become the person who always delivers with excellence, the person who shows up consistently, the person who doesn't cut corners, then even if your skill set is in an industry full of competition, you stand out. People will say, I could hire someone else, but they don't do it like you do it. That's the place where value skyrockets because you've stepped into a space where comparison disappears. Scarcity is not just what's in short supply, it's what's in short supply at the highest standard. There are two kinds of scarcity that determine value. One is natural scarcity. Something is rare because it just doesn't exist in abundance. The other is created scarcity. Something is rare because it is packaged, positioned, and perceived in a way that makes it exclusive. Both types apply to your life. You may have a gift or a talent that is naturally uncommon, but if you never refine it, it never feels rare. On the other hand, you can take a common ability, and by presenting it with mastery, with polish, with intention, you create the perception of rarity that elevates its value. That's why a bottle of water in the desert is priceless, but the same bottle in the grocery store is less than $1. Scarcity multiplies value, and perception is everything. This means the question you need to ask yourself is simple. What are you doing today to make yourself rare? Are you investing in yourself at a level most people would find unreasonable? Are you mastering skills most people overlook? Are you building a reputation that makes people think twice before they even consider replacing you? If not, then you're still swimming in the pool of the common, where people are expendable and value is negotiable. But the moment you cross over into rarity, people stop negotiating your value and start protecting your value. Think about it like this. When a diamond is discovered, it doesn't look like much. It's just a rock pulled from the dirt. What makes it rare and valuable is the process, the cutting, the polishing, the refining. That process removes what is unnecessary and shapes what is essential until the rare beauty is revealed. Your life is the same. The struggles, the challenges, the discipline, the long nights, the repeated practice, these are the tools that cut away the common so the rare and you can shine. That's why most people never become diamonds. They want to be rare without being refined. They want to shine without being shaped. But without the process, rarity is never revealed and value is never recognized. Scarcity creates value, and when you accept that truth, you stop chasing after what's common. You stop asking, how can I fit in? And you start asking, how can I stand out? You stop comparing yourself to people who are interchangeable, and you start positioning yourself as indispensable. You stop looking for shortcuts, and you start embracing the process that produces rarity. Because at the end of the day, the rare are remembered, the rare are rewarded, and the rare are revered. Mastery beats mediocrity. And that one principle separates those who build lasting wealth and influence from those who merely dabble and disappear. Too many people in life and business are satisfied with being halfway good at a lot of things, but never great at one thing. They spread themselves thin, they experiment, they try this and try that, And when the results don't come quickly enough, they move on to the next shiny object. That's mediocrity in motion, and mediocrity is the enemy of distinction. Nobody remembers the person who almost mastered their craft. Nobody pays top dollar for the person who is just good enough. The world is designed to reward the few who are willing to go deep instead of staying shallow, who are willing to practice long after the applause fades, and who dedicate themselves to becoming the best at what they do. Mastery is not about talent alone. Talent is the seed, but mastery is the harvest. Many people are talented, but talent without refinement produces inconsistency. Talent without discipline produces waste. Mastery is what happened is submitted to structure, training, repetition, and focus until it becomes predictable, reliable, and undeniable. A person with average talent who commits to mastery will always outperform the naturally gifted person who settles for mediocrity. That's why you can find stories of athletes, musicians, entrepreneurs, and leaders who weren't the most gifted in the beginning, but became the most successful in the end because they refused to stay at the level of good enough. A mediocrity feels safe because it's easy. It requires little effort and little sacrifice. It lets you blend in with everyone else, and blending in gives the illusion of comfort. But what mediocrity really does is keep you invisible, and invisible people are replaceable. If 10 people can do what you do with the same results, why should anyone choose you? Mastery solves that problem because mastery separates you. It creates a gap between you and the crowd so wide that comparison no longer makes sense. When someone operates at the level of mastery, clients don't ask, how much does it cost? They ask, how soon can I work with you? Because when the value is undeniable, the cost becomes irrelevant. To pursue mastery means committing to the long game. It means you understand that reputation is not built in a day, results are not produced in a week, and expertise is not developed in a month. It means you show up when others quit, you practice when others rest, and you study when others play. It means you fall in love with repetition because mastery is hidden in the repetition. The average person hates doing the same thing over and over, but the master knows that repetition is the road to precision, and precision is what creates predictability, and predictability is what produces confidence in yourself and in those who invest in you. The marketplace doesn't pay for average. Average gets the leftover clients, the smallest contracts, and the lowest salaries. Average is forgettable. Mastery, on the other hand, multiplies opportunities. Mastery positions you as an authority, as the standard. It makes people seek you out instead of you chasing after them. That's why mastery is not just a skill decision, it's a financial decision. The higher your mastery, the higher your income ceiling. The greater your depth, the greater your demand. You stop competing on price because nobody else does it like you. And mastery isn't just technical, it's mental, emotional, and spiritual. You must master your mindset so fear and doubt don't sabotage your progress. You must master your emotions so disappointment doesn't cause you to quit. You must master your principles so you stay aligned with truth even when shortcuts look tempting. Because if you don't master yourself, you'll never master your craft. Mastery is holistic. It flows out of who you are, not just what you do. The journey to mastery requires humility because it demands that you become a student again and again. The master is not the one who knows it all, but the one who never stops learning. That's why the greatest in every field are still practicing, still studying, still adjusting long after they've reached the top. They understand that the moment you stop growing, you start declining. Mediocrity settles, but mastery stretches. Mediocrity plateaus, but mastery climbs. Mediocrity says, I'm good enough, but mastery says, I can still get better. That mentality is what keeps you rare and irreplaceable. Character is currency because skills may open the door, but it is character that determines whether you get to stay in the room once you walk through it. There are people with talent, with charisma, with incredible ability who still find themselves shut out of opportunities because their lack of character made them untrustworthy. On the other hand, there are individuals who may not have been the most skilled or the most polished, but their integrity, their consistency, and their dependability elevated them in the eyes of others until doors opened for them that talent alone could never unlock. In the long run, people will forget what you said and even what you did, but they will never forget how you handled yourself when it counted. That's why character is more valuable than cash, because it determines the level of trust you can build, and trust is the foundation of every relationship, every business, and every opportunity. The truth is that the marketplace is crowded with people who know how to do the job, but very few who can be trusted to do it with honor. That's why character is currency. It has become rare. And whenever something is rare, its value increases. You can find someone who knows how to sell, but can you find someone who will sell with integrity? You can find someone who knows how to lead, but can you find someone who will lead without abusing their power? You can find someone who knows how to make money, but can you find someone who will make it without cutting corners? Those are the people who stand out because when everything else fades, character remains. Character is proven in small things before it shows up in big things. If a person cuts corners when no one is watching, if they compromise in private, eventually it will show up in public. You cannot hide who you are forever because character has a way of revealing itself under pressure. When life presses you, whatever is inside comes out. That's why the person who develops honesty, humility, and responsibility at the core of who they are will be elevated over time. People begin to say, I can count on this person. I can trust them with my resources, with my business, with my family, with my future. And that kind of trust cannot be bought. It must be earned. The irony is that some people think cutting corners will get them ahead faster, but in reality, it only shortens their lifespan of success. They may rise quickly, but they fall even quicker because a house built on shaky ground cannot stand. On the other hand, when you build on the foundation of character, the growth may look slower at first, but it lasts, it compounds and multiplies. Because people come back to the person who can be trusted. They refer others to the one they know won't disappoint. That's the compounding effect of character as currency. It grows interest over time, and it pays dividends for years to come. You also have to realize that character makes you irreplaceable in ways that skill never could. Someone can always be trained to do a task, but you cannot train integrity into a person who refuses to embrace it. You cannot train faithfulness into someone who values shortcuts more than principles. That's why people with character are hard to replace. A leader may say, I can teach someone else the skills, but I cannot afford to lose the person whose word I can trust, whose actions are consistent, and whose loyalty is unwavering. Skills are replaceable. Character is not. Another dimension of character is responsibility. When you are willing to take responsibility, not just for your wins, but also for your mistakes, you stand out. Most people run from responsibility because they want credit without accountability. But the person who owns their actions, who learns from their failures, who makes it right when they get it wrong, that person builds a reputation that money cannot buy. Responsibility creates reliability, and reliability creates opportunity. People would rather work with someone who may not be perfect, but can be trusted to be accountable than with someone who is gifted but unreliable. Character also influences influence. People don't follow titles, they follow trust. You can hold a position and still fail to lead if people do not trust your character. On the other hand, someone with no title but with strong character can become the most influential person in the room because people naturally lean on trustworthiness. Influence is a form of wealth, and character is the currency that purchases it. Without character, influence collapses. With character, influence expands. What you have to understand is that character is not about perfection. It is about alignment. Nobody is flawless, but character is formed when your actions consistently align with your values and your words. When you say one thing and live another way, people see through it eventually. But when your words and actions match, even if you stumble at times, people will still respect you because they know who you are at the core. That alignment builds credibility, and credibility is one of the most valuable assets you can possess. Solve problems few are willing to solve because that is the fastest way to separate yourself from the crowd and step into a category of your own. Most people look at problems as obstacles to avoid frustrations to complain about or responsibilities to pass on to someone else. They spend more energy explaining why the problem is unfair than they do looking for a solution. That's why the world is filled with problem identifiers, but starving for problem solvers. And the truth is, the marketplace doesn't reward those who point out problems. It rewards those who fix them. If you want to be rare to find and hard to replace, make yourself the kind of person who runs toward the problem instead of away from it. The size of the problem you are willing to solve determines the size of the reward you will receive. Small problems pay small, but big problems pay big. People get frustrated because their income never grows, but the reality is they are stuck solving problems that are common, easy, and obvious. Anyone can do that, so the reward stays small. If you are willing to go after the problems that others are afraid to touch, the ones that require more courage, more creativity, and more persistence, then you put yourself in a rare category. That's where opportunities multiply, because people will pay almost anything to someone who can solve the problems that are costing them sleep, peace, and money. Think about every major breakthrough, every great invention, every industry leader at the core. It was someone solving a problem most people ignored or thought was impossible. The wealthiest entrepreneurs didn't just start businesses, they solved problems. Transportation was a problem, so cars were created. Communication was a problem, so telephones and later smartphones were created. Access to information was a problem, so the internet was created. Every fortune is tied to a solution, and the bigger the problem, the greater the fortune. The key is not to run from problems, but to develop the mindset that says, if I can solve this, I can change lives and build wealth at the same time. Another reason most people avoid solving big problems is because solving problems requires responsibility. When you take on a problem, you take on ownership of the outcome. That's uncomfortable for those who want credit without accountability. But if you are willing to be the person who takes responsibility for fixing what others complain about, you immediately become indispensable. Employers, clients, communities, and even families are always searching for the one person who won't just describe the issue, but will actually take charge of making it better. If you become that person, you will never be without opportunities. To solve problems at a high level, you must develop resourcefulness. Rarely will you have every tool, every piece of knowledge, or every connection you think you need at the start. Most people disqualify themselves because they say, I don't know how, or I don't have enough. But the truth is problem solvers figure it out as they go. They learn, they adapt, they innovate, and they pull resources together in ways others don't see. Resourcefulness is the real skill of problem solvers because it takes creativity to see solutions where others only see obstacles. The person who learns to think differently, to ask better questions, to connect seemingly unrelated ideas, that's the person who creates solutions nobody else imagined. There is also a level of resilience required to solve the problems that others avoid. The bigger the problem, the more resistance you will face. Sometimes it will look unsolvable. Sometimes people will laugh at you for even trying. Sometimes the very people who will benefit from the solution will criticize you in the process. That's why resilience is essential, because most people give up halfway. If you keep pressing, if you keep testing, if you keep adjusting until you figure it out, you will end up with results that others thought were impossible. And when the solution finally comes, all the resistance turns into recognition because the person who solves the problem becomes the authority, the leader, the one whose name cannot be forgotten. What makes this so powerful is that problems create platforms. When you solve a problem, people talk about you, they recommend you, they bring others to you. Your name begins to travel further than your effort because results always speak louder than words. You don't have to market yourself as heavily when your solutions are working because people spread the word for you. That's how you become rare to find and hard to replace, not by making noise, but by making impact. Impact is the loudest marketing you will ever have, and it comes from solving real problems for real people. Build assets, not just activity, because activity alone keeps you busy, but it doesn't guarantee progress, and it certainly doesn't guarantee wealth. Too many people confuse motion with momentum. They wake up every day, check tasks off their list, hustle from one meeting to another, fill their calendars with activity, and feel accomplished simply because they are tired at the end of the day. But being tired doesn't mean you are moving forward. It just means you've been moving. The question is not how much you are doing, but what you are building with what you are doing. If every action you take leaves nothing behind but exhaustion, you are not building wealth. You are renting it. True wealth and long-term success come from building assets, things that continue to produce value long after you've stopped working on them. An asset is something that pays you even when you're not actively giving it your time. It could be a business system that operates with or without you, intellectual property that continues to generate royalties, digital products that can be sold repeatedly without new labor, or investments that grow over time. Assets multiply your effort and extend your reach beyond the limits of your personal energy. Activity without assets keeps you trapped in the cycle of trading time for money. And the problem with that model is simple. You will always run out of time before you run out of bills. That's why you must prioritize building assets, because assets make you hard to replace. Anyone can be busy, but not everyone can build something that keeps working when they're gone. The danger of relying only on activity is that it makes you replaceable. If your entire value is based on how many hours you put in, someone cheaper, younger, or more available can always come along and take your place. But when you have assets, you create leverage. Leverage allows you to do more with less, to impact more people with the same amount of effort, and to earn more without increasing your workload. That's what separates those who are perpetually grinding from those who are building legacies. The grinders are caught in endless activity, while the builders are producing assets that will serve them, their families, and their communities for years to come. Building assets also requires a shift in mindset. Most people are trained to think like employees, exchanging effort for immediate compensation. They want to see quick results, quick rewards, and quick paychecks. But asset builders think long term. They are willing to sacrifice immediate gratification to create something that produces ongoing fruit. They don't just ask, what will this action give me today? They ask, what will this action continue to give me tomorrow, next year, or 10 years from now? That long-term vision is what makes asset builders uncommon, because the majority of people don't have the patience or discipline to build something that outlives their initial effort. Consider the difference between writing a book and writing a social media post. A post may get likes and comments today, but by tomorrow it is forgotten. A book, on the other hand, once written and published, can continue to impact people and generate revenue for years. The same effort, writing words, produces two completely different outcomes depending on whether you're focused on activity or asset. That's why you must evaluate how much of your effort is going into building things that last versus things that disappear. If most of your time is spent on activities that vanish once you stop, then you are not building wealth. You are just spending energy. Another dimension of building assets is building people. When you pour into others, train them, mentor them, and develop their capacity, they become assets who extend your influence far beyond what you could do alone. Activity is limited to what you can accomplish by yourself, but assets expand what you can accomplish through others. That's why leaders who invest in people are never truly absent, because their values, systems, and influence keep multiplying through those they've trained. Building people is slower than just doing the work yourself. but it produces far greater returns because people carry forward your vision long after you're gone. Financial assets also matter because money that works for you is more powerful than money you work for. When you build investments, whether in businesses, real estate, or other vehicles, you create streams of income that don't depend on your constant presence. Too many people only think about earning, but wealth is not about earning more, it's about owning more. Ownership creates freedom. Ownership creates security. Ownership makes you difficult to replace because even if someone could do your work, they cannot own your assets. Ownership puts you in a category beyond competition because you are no longer just trading time, you are multiplying wealth. Building assets instead of activity also gives you resilience. Activity stops when you get sick, when you need rest, or when life interrupts, but assets keep going. They create stability that activity alone can never provide. The person who builds assets doesn't panic when work slows down because they know their assets are still producing. That kind of security is rare, and rarity is what makes someone valuable. Most people are replaceable because their value disappears when they stop working. But the person who has built systems, products, relationships, and investments that continue to operate regardless of their activity is in a completely different league. Serve at a higher standard because excellence is the one thing that immediately separates you from the sea of average. Most people live by the law of minimums. Do just enough to get by, just enough to not get fired, just enough to make the client sign off, just enough to check the box. They confuse adequacy with achievement and then wonder why no one remembers them, no one refers them, and no one is willing to pay them more. The truth is, nobody raves about just enough. People talk about excellence. They remember the person who went above and beyond, the business that exceeded expectations, the leader who gave more than was required. When you raise your standard, you make yourself rare because most people never will. Serving at a higher standard is not about perfection, it is about intention. It means showing up with the mindset that says, if my name is attached to it, it's going to be the best I can possibly make it. That mindset eliminates mediocrity because you stop doing things to get them off your list and start doing them in a way that makes an impact. Excellence requires effort, but the effort pays dividends because people never forget how you made them feel when you delivered more than they asked for. A client may not remember every detail of what you said, but they will remember that you cared enough to give them more value than they expected. That memory turns into loyalty, and loyalty is one of the most powerful currencies in the marketplace. The majority of people never rise to this level because they are addicted to shortcuts. They want the reward without the work, the recognition without the responsibility, the position without the preparation. But shortcuts always cut short the reward. When you are willing to take the long road, to sweat the details, to refine until the quality is undeniable, you elevate yourself above the crowd. That's why excellence feels rare. It is rare. Most are unwilling to pay the price it requires, but those who do become unforgettable. Serving at a higher standard also means consistency. Anyone can do something well once, but excellence requires doing it well over and over again until it becomes who you are. It is not about occasional greatness, but about habitual greatness. The person who consistently delivers quality builds a reputation that markets itself. You don't have to advertise that you are excellent. People will tell the story for you. Word of mouth becomes your marketing when your standard is excellence, because people can't help but talk about someone who always delivers above the line. Excellence creates distance between you and competition. In a crowded marketplace, most competitors are trying to outprice or outshout each other. But if you outserve them, if you outdeliver them, if you outcare them, then you eliminate competition entirely. People will say, there's no comparison. Nobody else does it like this. That is the power of a higher standard. It positions you beyond comparison. Once you are beyond comparison, you are no longer replaceable because substitutes don't even feel like options. Raising your standard also means raising your environment. Excellence doesn't thrive in chaos. The people you surround yourself with, the systems you operate in, the way you structure your time, all of it must align with the level you want to serve at. If you are surrounded by people who are satisfied with mediocrity, eventually their mindset will pull you down. But if you choose to build an environment that demands more from you, excellence becomes natural. It becomes your new normal. And when excellence is your normal, average feels uncomfortable. Another layer of serving at a higher standard is humility. Excellence is not arrogance. It is not about showing off how great you are. It is about showing deep respect for the people you serve. When you give your best, you honor the person receiving it. You are saying, you are worth the effort. You are worth the detail. You are worth my best. That posture of humility transforms service into something more powerful than a transaction. It becomes a relationship. And relationships built on excellence outlast contracts, outlast circumstances, and outlast competition. Excellence also requires vision. You cannot serve at a higher standard if you are only focused on what is right in front of you. You have to see beyond the immediate request to the long-term impact. A customer may come to you with a small need, but if you see their bigger picture, you can serve them at a level that changes their future. That kind of foresight turns a simple transaction into a life-changing experience. And the person who can create experiences instead of just transactions will always be in demand. Serving at a higher standard demands energy and commitment, but it also creates energy. When you know you've delivered your best, when you see the impact of exceeding expectations, it fuels you in ways mediocrity never could. Mediocrity drains because it leaves you unfulfilled. Excellence energizes because it aligns with your highest potential. When you serve at a higher standard, you are not just serving others, you are serving yourself by living in alignment with the greatness inside of you.